Welcome in to another Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. As always, my name is Gabe Anderson, and I'm joined by Chris Emerson. Chris, how we doing?
Doing all right. Took a little bit of a lump last night, but that's okay. We'll be all right.
And before we get going, make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure to give us a 5-star rating. Last time I looked, there were 3 or 4 more ratings on there. And even if you give us a 4-star rating, give us the rating you think we deserve because we love your honesty. And if you can, give a review of the show as well. Everything helps to spread it around. And exciting times here in Minnesota. Like you said, unfortunately took lumps on Wednesday. So let's get right into it. Chris, just overall thoughts from game 1, and then we'll get into some specifics. Go ahead.
We looked flat. We just looked like, that's kind of an easy thing to say, but we just didn't look like we were playing with the same intensity. And the whole time I was like, what's wrong with Anthony Edwards? Like, why isn't he attacking? Why isn't he in attack mode? We just didn't look like we had that knife sharp edge that we had been playing with. And then I thought about it, like we did just get off a game 7. Like for a young team to have such an emotional rise to take out, the last year's champ at their place in game 7 in an emotional game. That means something. It's normal to have probably an emotional dump and hard to get up for that next game after that. I saw somebody say that teams coming off a game 7 win were 0-13 straight up against teams who didn't play game 7 in the first game since 2011. So, it happens. But for us to be within 3 points and play kind of, lackadaisical or whatever, like not really with our full energy, that kind of means we're in a decent place.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that Ant looked slow and taking a lot of threes. He went 5 for 12 from behind the 3-point line. They were mentioning in the third quarter, they were saying on the broadcast, they were saying why Ant looks pretty tired. And I started thinking about it. Well, why is he tired? Because they've had a couple days off. And it's only game 1 of the series. That doesn't bode well for the games going forward. But now, just when you were mentioning it right now, I guess they did come off quite an emotional run against Denver. And I suppose that could go into a young 22-year-old being a little tired with fresh legs. And to their credit, the Dallas Mavericks, they committed to the idea of packing the paint, making the Wolves shoot from behind the 3-point line. And I think what happened in the second half is we just started missing shots. We just weren't hitting them like we're in the first half.
And, Dallas is a good team. So, it's not like a big knock that we lost to them. And it was a close game. We didn't play exceptionally great. Dallas didn't play that great either. They'll probably play better. So, it's a long series. I think we're okay. But yeah, it was definitely an eye opener. But what made me happy is so many of our extra guys had big moments. Like Nas had a good stretch. Jaden McDaniels played well again. Nickeil Alexander, I can't say the same. He needs to step up. Slow-mo actually had a couple buckets, which was nice. Overall, I still don't think he's effective when he's on the court, but our extra guys did all right.
Yeah, if Slow-Mo's going to be there, you might as well take what you can get. You were mentioning Nickeil Alexander-Walker. His last 2 games, 1 for 12 from the field, 0 for 9 from 3. His only bucket in the last 2 games was that little layup midway through the third quarter. He absolutely needs to be better. And to pile on that, his last 2 series, 6.5 points per game, 34% from the field, 29% from 3, a -62. And mind you, a lot of those games we were winning. So Nickeil Alexander-Walker has not been effective so far this series or the series before either. He really needs to pick it up. Now, do you think it's a case of him showing his true colors? Because like you said, he's only on a $9 million deal for 2 years. He was basically a throw in the D'Lo trade. Is this just the Nickeil Alexander walk? Does he just not have enough to be effective? Maybe he's just like kind of a Jaden where he's a good defender and can hit a couple threes here and there. Are we expecting too much out of him, or has he shown enough where he can be better than that? What do you think in tough spots?
Yeah, I think he can be better. I mean, I think it's just ups and downs. Like the shots are going to come, they're going to fall. He seems to be shooting them still confidently, which I like. They're just going to fall, and hopefully they fall soon. But I think this type of pressure hits everybody differently, and he knows that he's playing for a contract. That small money that he's making, if he has an impactful series, I mean, that triples when his next contract comes up. So he just needs to step up. He needs to play better. But a lot of our guys do. I mean, Mike Conley needs to step up. Like, he did okay again. But okay is like not enough. Like, he needs to play better. He's had some dumb plays. He had a couple bad turnovers late when it mattered.
Yep.
And he's had a couple games where he's had dumb fouls and like silly things. Like, he needs to step up as our leader. We got a lot of guys that need to step up, and I think they will.
Do you think that for Conley, it's been so long since he's been?
Oh, we lost you. Since the Western Conference final or the conference finals for him. Oh, you're still out. Still can't hear you. Yeah, I mean, it's been so long. I'm sure there's a lot of stress and pressure on him to step up, but I mean, he's also one of those guys that's a vet, and he needs to step above some of that.
Yeah. Am I back now?
Yep.
Okay, I'll edit that in post. Man, this I don't know, this plug for this mic keeps messing up, but I don't know. Anyway, moving forward. So, and some more stats from the night, from the last game and the last series as well. The Wolves, when they win in games that they've won, so the 8 games that they've won, they've shot 83.7% from the free throw line. Their season average is 77%. They made 21 free throws a games in wins. In losses, that goes down to 67.4%, 15 makes per game. And last night, they went 11 for 18 from the free throw line. I mean, these are bunnies. You make some of those free throws, this game goes a completely other way. And I think it shows, particularly in the playoffs, these games are razor thin. Like, for example, you hit a couple of those free throws. And again, the Timberwolves at the end of the first half had another screw up. They threw the ball out of bounds. I think it was Ant threw the ball out of bounds. And then there goes Irving for an and one on the other side. That's like that's a potential 6-point swing. And you can't have that at the end of halves. It's just the little things that kept the Wolves from winning that game.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, free throw shooting, and it's just so frustrating. I mean, we missed 7 free throws. They missed 1. We lost by 3. Like, that right there's the deciding factor of the game. They were all over the offensive glass. I mean, getting extra buckets that they shouldn't have, getting extra possessions that they shouldn't have. Like, but we talked about it on here. I mentioned it. Those dude Gafford and Lively or whatever his name is. I keep on forgetting his name.
It's Lively. It's Lively.
Yeah, those guys they're a handful. Like, they've got so much energy and they're all over the place and they play so hard. They're just a lot to deal with. And it's going to be a tough series, but I think we're going to pull it out. I think we'll still be fine.
Yeah, I think we're going to be okay as well. And you're not going to win many games when your best 2 players, Cat and Ant, combined for 12 for 36 from the field. And what's also crazy about the last game was the Mavericks only hit 6 threes. We had a 36-point advantage on the 3-pointer and still couldn't come out with the victory. That's why I am a little leery. Now, obviously, next game is a new game, but guys like Derek Jones Jr. for the Mavs were hitting in the last series, and I think it's only a matter of time until they start hitting in this series.
So a lot of those guys really eat from the corners, like that Washington and Derek Jones. Junior, they are a big time, just straight corner 3-point shooting guys. And if you can force them off the corner and they have to shoot from above the break or anywhere else, they drop quite a bit. And that's what we were a lot of those guys were shooting like longer threes, and they're just not 3-point shooters. But
Mhm.
if you can post up in that short corner, those guys will eat it up. I want to point out one guy. I got to give him a shout out. His name's Hairlock 8672. He was on YouTube in the comments, and I told him I'd shout him out. He's a Mavs guy. He said Mavs in 6. I said if the Mavs win week 1, I'll shout you out. So I got to give him credit for that. I think we're going to be okay. I'm not worried.
No, I'm not too worried either. And talking about the miscues at the end of the game, I mean, and you're talking about Mike Conley as well, like his lob to Rudy Gobert, that was
Yes.
stupid. That was a dumb play. I don't know if you can call the offensive goaltending on Cat a miscue. I don't know. That's so close. And I mean, what is Cat supposed to do in that situation?
No, I think he did fine.
And also, my only thing was, I believe that was a 3-pointer. I think if Cat doesn't touch it, it might go in.
That is always the trick on some of those.
Yeah, because I was looking at the trajectory of the ball, and it might graze the front of the rim and go in. I don't know. Now, but I do love, particularly in a game where we're getting out rebounded, I do love seeing Cat going after the offensive rebound. And he made some impressive shots, some shots that he doesn't usually make. Like, for example, in the fourth quarter, I believe the possession before he hit that, he was trying to back down and then turn around and hit a 1-footer, almost like a la Dirk Nowitzki. That was an impressive shot. That showed some elitism in Cat. There's not many guys that 7 foot in particular that can hit that kind of shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword with Karl-Anthony Towns. Like, so he hits that shot, and that's beautiful. You're like, holy cow. The problem is he was posting up a guy 6 inches shorter than him, and he couldn't back him down any further. And that's the thing. Like, everyone was like, well, Cat's going to crush this series because he's going up against, Washington, who's listed at like 6'7". But the problem is he can't do anything in the post versus these guys. I don't know if he doesn't have low enough center of gravity or what, but I mean, Jamal Murray was keeping him off the block in the last series. And, these little guys that they have putting on Cat are having no trouble keeping Cat out of the paint. So unless we find out a way to really take advantage of Cat's height, he's kind of a detriment out there sometimes. It's really frustrating that he can't use his size to his advantage.
Right. And he does. I actually like it when he gets the low post and doesn't try to do too much. He just takes a couple dribbles and just puts up a little, like a little jump hook. I think he's probably on the season. He's probably shooting 80% on those because he's really good when he can get that position.
I think we have to. One thing I don't understand, and Chris Finch is a million times smarter than me, but when we're posting up Karl-Anthony Towns because he's got a small guy on him, I don't know why we don't have Cat cut through in motion and then catch the ball down in the block. Like, post the guy up in the paint originally, start there, but he always starts out at like the 3-point line and tries to back him down, and the guys just don't give up any space. So I don't know. That's what we're gonna have to change. Karl-Anthony Towns has to be effective against this smaller lineup, or else there's no point in being big.
Yeah, I agree with that. And another thing we got to change, I think that Anthony Edwards, I'm sorry, you got to be a little more aggressive.
Yeah,
and now
and he knows that.
I know he went 5 for 12 from 3 or whatever. He hit 5 threes, but I don't care if Derek Lively's there. I've seen you attack better defenders to greater success. Now, like they were saying on the broadcast, Ant looked tired. I'm sorry, it's the Western Conference Finals. There's no time to be tired. And I get it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an elite athlete. Would I be tired too in that situation? Yeah, but that's because I'm 29 years old and out of shape. But you've got to attack the basket and try to maybe even get some of these guys in foul trouble as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to be more aggressive in
I don't think he was tired. I think he just wasn't locked in. I mean, I don't buy the tired take. I mean, he might have been looked that way because he didn't have that sharpness to him, that aggressive. But I
Mhm.
think Derek Jones Jr. His length and his athleticism kind of stifled him a little bit. And I think the fact that Kyrie went right at him and scored a couple buckets,
Yeah.
multiple buckets right away, kind of shook Anthony Edwards. Like he's not used to being scored on like that. So I think a lot of it got in his head, and it's okay for a 22-year-old kid to have game one of the Western Conference Finals get in your head a little bit.
Yep.
Just you have to adjust and move on.
I almost maybe think that the 2 series prior maybe made him a little overconfident, saying, "Oh, hey, I took on Booker. I
Yeah.
took on Murray. I no problem with Kyrie." And I think it was a mistake for him to call out Kyrie Irving, saying, "I got Kyrie." I think that was a little bit of a mistake, particularly a veteran like Kyrie who's been there before. He has some of the best handles in the entire league. Kyrie kind of made him eat humble pie in that one.
Yeah, I mean, he did. But I mean, if you listen to the quote, what he said is, "I've got Kyrie next round, so we'll see how I do against him." So I mean, it wasn't like I got Kyrie, I'm going to dominate him. He's like, "Well, that's my next matchup, on to the next one." So I think it was
Mhm.
kind of blown out of proportion by people trying to make a bulletin board piece out of anything, but he's got to step up. Edwards is our leader, and he's got to step up, and I think he will. Um, and Kyrie Irving, he went off, and a lot of that was when Rudy was out. I know when Rudy checked out in the second quarter, they scored 6 straight buckets at the rim.
Yep.
We got to we got to play better on D. We got to stop, and they shouldn't be able to get to the rim as easy as they did. And I believe they won't. We're the number one rim defense in the league the entire year for a reason. All this stuff is going to get adjusted.
And another thing you're mentioning about Rudy Gobert, for the playoffs so far, he's a plus 122. And even in the loss, he was a plus 10 last night. So he has been super effective. I think he had 2 blocks. And let's talk about another quote here. Chris Finch was asked about the film
Well,
session
real
that they
quick
had.
about Rudy.
Go ahead.
Well, Rudy wasn't there for that huge blowout versus Denver either when we beat him by like 30. So
That's
like
true. Yep.
that's free money on that plus minus that he didn't even get to. So he could easily be, 140.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So Chris Finch was asked about the film session today. He said to the
Yeah.
guys, "We're 3-3 at home, and we've had 2 kind of similar performances coming off stints of success. There's a lot of ways immaturity kind of rears its head, and it might be one of them. But we've got to pay it. But they've got our attention now, so there's no reason to be feeling ourselves." And then he also said the Western Conference Finals started. Not sure if they got the memo, but they have this afternoon. So I'm assuming that Chris Finch got on him in that film session. I don't think it was hunky dory or anything. I think that he brought some toughness to that film session, and I'm excited to see how they come out in game 2 after that.
Yeah, I mean, Naz Reid and Slow-Mo both said that it was quote unquote like quite a film session today. So I think that they got their butts chewed out, which is fine. Again, this is to get them back locked in, get them understanding, the severity of what they're dealing with now. Like, there's not very many times you're going to be here. Like Dan Marino said, he got to the Super Bowl in his rookie year or second year or something like that, and he thought he was going to come back, many more times. It wasn't a big deal. Never saw it again. That can happen to anybody. So you got to take them when they come, and you've got to jump on this opportunity when it's here.
Now, do you think, and I know they were talking on the broadcast about this a lot. I think, what was it, Van Gundy? Van Gundy was on the broadcast. Yeah, I think so. But they were talking a lot and harping on the Wolves drop coverage. That's where they have Rudy drop and kind of play 2-on-1 on defense. Do you see them coming out and drop coverage next game, or do you think that's a thing of the past where we tried it and it didn't work? I saw a lot of negativity about that on Twitter.
Armchair coaches. Yeah, I mean, it's not like we were the number one defense the entire year long. It's not like we didn't just take out the champions and one of the most talented teams in history in the Suns. I think we're going to be okay. I mean, Rudy was in 100% possessions last game. His defensive rating when Rudy was on the court was a 100, which is very good. When Rudy was off the court, our defensive rating was 160, which is god awful. That means like pretty much most teams average about 100 possessions a game, give or take a few. So that would mean that without Rudy, we would have gave up 160 points in the game. With Rudy, we would have gave up 100. So like we just need to play better. And Rudy was the guy in drop most of the time. They got a couple dunks back to back, so it was like, it's one of those impact things that really look bad, but they attacked the paint the entire game, and I think we did fine. There's a lot of other things we're gonna have to clean up. I don't think the drop is our number one issue, to be honest.
Okay, what do you think are some of those other things that we got to clean up? Like kind of keys to game 2.
I mean, I think it's more of our offensive flow. I mean, when the ball was moving and the moving around, everybody was eating. We played well, and it just comes down to Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns beating their matchups. Like if there are two top dogs, they're going to have to beat their matchups just the same way that Luka and Kyrie beat the matchups for us. Like we can't have them playing subpar, or else we're not going to win. I don't think defensively we have to do much differently. I mean, we did what we can. We shut down all of their extra guys, and we made their top two guys work. Luka, didn't shoot very well. He had like 26 points on 27 shots or something like that. If that's the case, sure, keep that up all the time. Like we'll give him that. So I don't think we have to do much different defensively. I think it's our offense that we really need to tune up and attack more. Like we need to be that aggressive Timberwolves team that we usually have been, not settling for threes.
Yeah, and I think we did a good job on Luka in the first half, not so much in the second half when they started hitting shots. I think the key will be to force Luka just into tough shots. Like you saw him make some step back threes, but I would assume that if he shoots 10 of them, he hits 3 of them. So if we can keep him shooting tough shots, and even that shot he made down the stretch to kind of seal the game a little bit, that was Jaden was right in his face. Like Jaden was right there. That was a tough shot. So if we can continue to do that, I'll bet you over a 7-game series, he's going to start missing eventually. And if he doesn't stop missing, then he needs to be in the consideration of a top 2-3 player in the entire league.
Well, I mean, I think he is. I mean, look at Don. A lot of people are saying he should have got MVP. I mean, this dude's an absolute monster. But I mean, he shot 12 of 26. So he missed 14 shots, made 12. I mean, that's what happens when you're a shooter. He's going to shoot a lot, and I think we did okay, like you said. As long as we keep holding those other guys down, and Washington doesn't go for 18 to 20, or Jones doesn't go for 20 on just garbage stuff, or Lively doesn't get a bunch. Like as long as we keep those guys down and we play Timberwolves basketball, I think we're going to be okay.
I would, if I'm the Mavs, a little Mavs analysis here, and we saw it down the stretch, I would consider starting Lively. I mean, he's your future anyway. And it's interesting, Dwight Powell, who's been with the Mavericks for 10 years, he didn't play a minute and hasn't been playing any minutes. It's interesting how he has fallen out of the lineup, considering he used to be, I think during their last run, he was their starting center.
Yeah, because he's just not as long or as athletic as these two guys. Like that's all he is an athletic guy, and they just found bigger, more athletic energy guys. So yeah, I mean, Gafford's a beast too. I mean, they're both good. Rudy's gonna have to handle them better, on the glass, I think is something that we need to do better. But it'll be a team effort. And again, if we have Nas play the way he did and we have Jaden play the way he did, I'm not worried. I think we're going to still win in 5 or 6.
Okay. Now, do you think that Jaden is sustainable? This little run he's on, like I said, in his last 3 games, he's been on an absolute tear, shooting near 70%, putting about 21 points a game and shooting about 60% from 3. Do you think it's sustainable, or will we go back to the Jaden where he plays good defense but kind of falls in the background?
I mean, there's probably a little bit of both. What I think is going to be sustainable, or what I hope he can sustain, is shooting. Like versus Dallas, he shot 15 shots. Denver, he shot 10. In the last two Denver games, so he's averaging like 13 shots a game over the last three games. Before that, he was, at 6-7 shots a game. Like, he needs to be aggressive. He can't be a guy who just is like the fifth option, and you let somebody like Kyrie defend you and just, take a break. Like, you need to be aggressive. You need to attack. He's not going to shoot 80%. That's not going to happen. But as long as he's being active, that's all I ask for. Like, I get sick when I see him come down on offense and just stand in the corner and just let somebody take a break on him. He's crashing the glass. He's being aggressive. He's passing the ball better than I've ever seen him do. Like, he will attack and then dump off a couple times. He also had a huge turnover trying to do too much, which kind of sealed the game for them. So he needs to know exactly when to pull the trigger and when not. But I like what I've seen out of him. As long as he's aggressive, he should be effective.
I think so too. And one thing, one of my last points, one thing I've noticed about the Western Conference.
Lost you again. One thing, I'll point out what I think is going to happen with this series. I think we're going to win this next game, and I think it's going to catapult us into just some serious domination. And I think we're going to I think it's going to still be Wolves in 5.
Oh, wow. Okay. So 4 in a row?
Yeah, I think we're just going to run through them.
Okay. The one thing, and the point I was making before my mic went out, I don't know, this cord, I got to look into it. But it's interesting. It almost feels like now that we've gotten the Western Conference Finals, the NBA is trying to rush to the finals.
Yes.
Because it was weird. Like, during the Suns series, we'd play a game, then we'd have like 3 days off. And then we'd play a game, and then we'd have a couple days off, and then maybe play every 2 days or something. Then the Denver series, like, for example, after game 2, we had how many days off? Like 4 games off.
Yeah, it was something like that for sure.
And now the NBA and the Western Conference Finals, it's like game day off, game day off, game day off. So it's weird how this is like scheduled, because you would think they would give teams more time during the conference finals rather than the early rounds. It's weird how the NBA does it.
It is strange. I think it might play to our advantage, just because, Luka's, not the picture of health, of physical fitness. So maybe he can get worn down, but it is strange how they're going every other day here. And like, for example, we played on May 6th, and then the next game was May 10th. So 4 days,
right.
4 days after that. And then, there's those big gaps. I don't get it, but
I get it. It's called TV, because now the
There's
NBA
no other thing on.
Yeah, now the NBA wants a game on every night. That's pretty much what's going on. They don't want, and actually I'm watching right now. Obviously, when you're listening, the final, but Indiana is actually sticking with Boston. I think they can make a series out of it. I don't think that they're going to win, but anyway, we'll talk about that another time. We got to wrap it up here. Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Wolves in 5. That's what I'm saying.
I got Wolves in 6, but I like it. I like it. 4 in a row would be amazing. Anyway, this is the Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. Please, if you have your phone, take it out. Give us a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple. It'll really help out. Get our podcast to new listeners. If you want to help out, that's the best way you can do it. Give us a 5-star rating and like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. And as always, go Wolves.